The stars stopped moving. Commander Kyle pressed his scaled hands against the viewing window of his flagship and watched the swirling lights of hyperspace fade into the familiar darkness of normal space. After 3 months of travel, the Vorthak War fleet had finally arrived at their destination. "Report," Kyle ordered, his voice echoing through the bridge. His crew moved quickly at their stations, tentacles dancing over controls with practiced efficiency. "We have dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, Commander," announced his navigation officer. "All ships report successful translation. The fleet is intact." Kale nodded. 50 warships, each capable of burning a planet's surface clean. It was more than enough firepower to deal with whatever primitive life forms might have evolved on the third planet since their last visit. According to the ancient records, Earth had been nothing more than a rock with simple creatures crawling around on it. That was 500,000 years ago. "Scanner reading, Nix," Kale called to his science officer. Nix looked up from her console, confusion clear on her reptilian features. "Commander, I am getting some strange readings. The scanners show massive artificial structures throughout the system. There are objects in orbit around every planet and moon." "Impossible," Kale said. He moved to look over her shoulder. "The last survey showed only basic life forms. Check your equipment." "I have run 3 full diagnostics, Commander. The readings are consistent." Nix's voice carried a note of worry. "There are structures around the gas giants that appear to be habitats, and the asteroid belt shows signs of extensive mining operations." Kale stared at the display. The readings showed a level of technology that rivaled their own civilization. But that could not be right. The primitive apes they had cataloged could barely make fire when the Vorthak had last visited this system. "Show me Earth," he commanded. The main screen flickered and displayed the third planet. Kale had expected to see the blue and green world, from their records, perhaps with some small cities scattered across its surface. What he saw instead made his blood run cold. Earth pulsed with light. Not the warm glow of cities, but something else entirely. Energy patterns that made no sense danced across the planet's surface. The moon had been transformed into something that hurt to look at directly. Massive structures extended from its surface into space like metallic roots. "Commander," his communications officer spoke up. "I am detecting thousands of artificial satellites around Earth. And there are ships, Commander. Many ships." "What kind of ships?" Kale asked, though part of him already dreaded the answer. "Unknown design. They appear to be using some form of propulsion we do not recognize. No heat signatures, no electromagnetic emissions. They are just there." Kyle turned away from the display. This had to be some kind of mistake. His people had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and enslaved dozens of species. Earth was supposed to be an easy target, a simple mining operation to gather resources for the Empire. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Defensive formation. We proceed as planned, but with caution." As the Vorthak ships moved deeper into the Sol system, more impossible sights greeted them. Venus had been covered in a crystalline shell that reflected sunlight in patterns that seemed almost artistic. Mars showed signs of massive terraforming, with green patches visible even from their current distance. The moons of Jupiter glowed with their own internal light. "Commander," Nix called out again, "I am detecting massive energy readings from the inner system. Whatever technology these beings possess, it operates on principles we do not understand." "Impossible," Kyle repeated, but with less conviction than before. "They were primitive. Our records are clear." "Perhaps the records are Old Commander, suggested his tactical officer. 500,000 years is a long time. Maybe they developed faster than expected. Kyle wanted to laugh at the suggestion. His people had needed millions of years to develop space travel. Even the most advanced species they had encountered required hundreds of thousands of years to progress from basic tools to interstellar flight. The idea that these Earth creatures could achieve such development in only 500,000 years was absurd. Sir, the communications officer interrupted his thoughts. We are receiving a transmission. From where? It appears to be coming from multiple sources throughout the system. The signal is incredibly strong and clear. They are broadcasting in multiple languages, including ancient Vorthak, sir. Kyle felt his heart skip a beat. Ancient. Vorthak had not been spoken for over 200,000 years. It was the language of his ancestors, from before the Empire had conquered most of known space. "Put it through," he ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was calm and measured. It spoke in perfect ancient Vorthak, with an accent that reminded Kale of recordings from his people's distant past. "Greetings, travelers from the Vorthak Empire. This is Earth Traffic Control. We have been monitoring your approach for the past several days. Please state your business in our system." Several days? Kyle looked around his bridge in confusion. Their ships used the best stealth technology in the galaxy. How could these beings have detected them while still in hyperspace? "Respond," Kyle told his communications officer. "Tell them we are here to reclaim this system for the Empire. This world belongs to us by right of first survey." The response came almost immediately. "We understand your position, Commander Kale. However, Earth and its solar system are currently under the protection of the Human Federation. We invite you to dock at Luna Station 7 for discussions regarding your claims." Kale's mind reeled. They knew his name. They knew about the Empire's claims to this system, and they spoke of humans as if they were some kind of galactic power. "Humans?" he asked aloud. "Nix, what do our records say about humans?" His science officer consulted her. "Database. Humans appear to be the dominant species that evolved on Earth, Commander. According to our surveys, they were barely capable of tool use when we last visited. The records describe them as primitive bipedal mammals with limited intelligence." "Sir," the tactical officer called out, "the unknown ships are moving to intercept us. They are not showing any weapons, but their approach vector suggests they mean to surround our formation." Kale made his decision. If these humans wanted to play at being a galactic power, he would remind them of their place in the universe. "All ships, power weapons. Prepare to demonstrate the might of the Empire. Target the lead vessel. Weapons powered and ready, Commander." "Fire." The Vorthak flagship unleashed a blast of pure energy that could vaporize a small moon. Kyle watched the beam race toward the approaching human ship, confident that this display of power would end any pretense of resistance. The beam struck the human vessel dead center. For a moment, space lit up with the fury of a small star. When the light faded, Kale expected to see debris scattered across the void. Instead, the human ship continued its approach completely undamaged. Its hull did not even show scorch marks from the attack. "Impossible," Kyle whispered, staring at the screen in disbelief. The calm voice returned to his speakers. "Commander Kyle, that was unnecessarily aggressive. Please power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted to Luna Station 7. We really do need to talk." Commander Tejo stood in the control center of Luna Station 7, watching the alien fleet through the massive viewing windows. The Vorthak ships looked exactly like the historical records had described them. Dark, angular vessels covered in weapon ports and armor plating. They had not changed their designs much in 500,000 years. "Sir, they just fired on patrol ship Harmony," reported Lieutenant Sora from her station. "Captain Dongsik reports no damage. Their weapons appear to use focused plasma technology." Taeho nodded. "About what we expected. Any response from Captain Dongsik? He says the ship's hull absorbed the energy completely. He is asking if he should return fire." "Negative. We stick to the plan. Have Captain Dongsik continue his approach. Keep all weapons powered down." Taeho had been expecting this encounter for 3 years. Earth's deep space monitoring systems had detected the Vorthak fleet when it was still months away from the Sol system. The aliens were not particularly subtle in their approach. Their ships left energy signatures that could be tracked across dozens of light years. The humans had debated how to handle first contact with this particular species. The Vorthak Empire had a reputation throughout the galaxy as conquerors and slavers. They had destroyed dozens of civilizations over the past 1,000,000 years. Most species lived in fear of their massive fleets and advanced weapons. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Jamin, "the alien commander is demanding that we surrender the system to them. He claims Earth belongs to the Vorthak Empire by right of first survey." "Did you tell him we are aware of their survey?" Taeho asked. "Yes, sir. I also explained that Earth is currently under human protection." He did not seem impressed. Taeho smiled. The Vorthak had indeed surveyed Earth 500,000 years ago. Human archaeologists had found the remains of their automated probes buried in ice cores and deep ocean sediments. The aliens had cataloged early humans as barely intelligent animals and moved on to more promising worlds. It was an understandable mistake. 500,000 years ago, humans had indeed been primitive creatures struggling to survive in a hostile world. What the Vorthak had not anticipated was how quickly humans could adapt and evolve. "Sir, we have 30 more Vorthak ships dropping out of hyperspace," reported the sensor operator. "They are forming a battle formation around their flagship. Any signs they are powering down weapons?" "Negative, sir. If anything, they appear to be charging for another attack." Taeho sighed. He had hoped the aliens would be more reasonable. The human government had prepared multiple scenarios for this encounter, ranging from peaceful negotiation to complete destruction of the alien fleet. He much preferred the peaceful options. "Signal Captain Sora on the stealth ship Silent Wind," he ordered. "Tell her to proceed with infiltration protocol." "Yes, sir." Captain Sora and her crew had been waiting in position for hours. Their ship used technology that bent light and energy around it, making it completely invisible to most sensors. While the Vorthak had been focused on the obvious human ships approaching them, Sora had quietly moved her vessel into the center of their formation. "Sir, Captain Sora reports she is in position," Jamin announced. "She has access to all 50 alien vessels." "Excellent. Tell her to begin Phase 1. What happened next would have seemed like magic to most galactic civilizations. Throughout the Vorthak fleet, weapon systems simply stopped working. Not broken, not destroyed, just deactivated. The aliens could still move their ships and communicate, but every offensive system on every vessel went dark simultaneously. On the alien flagship, Taeho knew the commander would be shouting at his crew, demanding to know what had happened to their weapons. The Vorthak were a proud and warlike species. Being rendered helpless would be deeply disturbing to them. "Sir, the alien commander is demanding an explanation. He wants to know what we did to their ships. Tell him we simply deactivated their weapons systems. Explain that we mean them no harm. But we cannot allow them to threaten our people or property. Taeho watched the alien ships drift in space, powerless to continue their attack. He felt a mixture of pity and frustration. The Vorthak were not evil beings, not really. They were simply trapped in an old way of thinking that saw the universe as something to be conquered rather than protected. "Sir, we have 2 more alien fleets approaching from different vectors," the sensor operator called out. "It looks like this was a coordinated attack with multiple waves." "How many ships total?" "I count 150 vessels, sir. All Vorthak design. All heavily armed." Taeho rubbed his chin thoughtfully. The aliens had committed significant resources to this attack. They clearly intended to overwhelm human defenses through sheer numbers. It was a reasonable strategy if they had been facing a typical galactic civilization. Unfortunately for them, they were not facing a typical civilization. "Signal Admiral Bay-ul on the defense platform," Taeho ordered. "Tell her we have multiple hostile fleets and request immediate support." "Yes, sir." Admiral Bay-ul acknowledges. She says the defense grid is activating now. Through the viewing window, Taeho watched space around Earth begin to change. What had appeared to be empty void suddenly filled with structures. Massive defense platforms materialized as their stealth systems deactivated. Weapon emplacements that had been hidden in asteroids and space debris revealed themselves. The Sol system had always been heavily defended, but most of those defenses remained invisible until needed. Human technology had advanced far beyond the need for obvious displays of military power. "Sir, the 2nd and 3rd alien fleets have also been disabled," Sora reported from her stealth ship. "All weapon systems are non-functional. The aliens appear to be trying to restart their systems, but they are having no success." "Casualties?" Taeho asked. "None, sir. All alien vessels remain intact with full life support. We have simply removed their ability to cause harm." This was the beauty of human military doctrine. Rather than destroying enemies, they preferred to neutralize threats while preserving life. It had taken centuries to develop weapons that could disable without killing, but the effort had been worth it. "Sir, the alien commander is requesting communication," Jamin announced. "Put him through." The voice that came through the speakers was angry and confused. "What have you done to our ships? Our weapons will not respond." Taeho replied in perfect Vorthak. "Commander, we have simply deactivated your offensive systems. Your ships and crews are unharmed. We invite you to dock at Luna Station 7 for discussion." "You speak our language," the alien commander said, surprise clear in his voice. "We speak many languages, Commander. We have been studying galactic civilizations for quite some time. We know a great deal about the Vorthak Empire." There was a long pause before the alien responded. "Impossible. We have no records of humans in our databases. You should be primitive animals." "A lot can change in 500,000 years, Commander. Perhaps it is time you updated your records." Taeho gestured to his crew. "Begin tractor beam operations. Bring the alien flagship to docking bay 12. Use gentle pressure. We do not want to damage their ship." "Yes, sir." As the massive alien vessel was slowly pulled toward Luna Station 7, Taeho reflected on what was about to happen. The Vorthak were about to learn that the galaxy had changed while they were busy conquering and destroying. Humanity had been quietly building something new, something better. It was going to be quite a shock for them. Science Officer Nix ran her clawed fingers along the walls of her cell, trying to understand what she was touching. The surface felt like metal, but it was warm and seemed to pulse with a faint rhythm. When she pressed against it, the material gave slightly like living tissue, yet her scanner readings insisted it was some form of advanced alloy. "Impossible," she muttered to herself, the same word she had been using constantly since their capture 3 days ago. The humans had been remarkably gentle during the boarding process. No weapons, no violence, just polite requests for surrender, accompanied by technology that made resistance pointless. When Commander Kyle had refused to cooperate, the humans had simply teleported the entire Vorthak command crew off their ships and into these comfortable cells. Teleportation. Nyx still could not believe it. Her people had theories about matter, transmission, but the energy requirements made it impractical for anything larger than small objects. Yet the humans had moved dozens of living beings across space as easily as walking through a door. The cell door made no sound as it opened. Dr. Bayol entered, carrying what appeared to be food and a cup of some steaming liquid. The human was female, middle-aged by their standards, with graying hair and kind eyes behind thin spectacles. "Good morning, Nyx," Dr. Bayol said in perfect Vorthak. "I brought you some breakfast. I hope you slept well." "Your ship makes no sense," Nyx said bluntly. "The walls are alive. The gravity changes direction in different sections, and I detected at least 12 different types of energy I cannot identify." Dr. Bayol smiled and set the tray down on the small table. "Our ships are grown, not built. They are semi-living organisms that we have bred for space travel. As for the gravity, we learned long ago that artificial gravity wells are much more efficient than spinning sections or acceleration." "Grown?" Nyx stared at the human. "You breed your spacecraft?" "Oh, yes. Much more efficient than traditional manufacturing. A ship like this one takes about 6 months to mature from a seed pod. They heal themselves, adapt to new environments, and can even reproduce if needed." Nyx felt her worldview cracking. Everything the human said contradicted known science. "What about the energy signatures I am detecting? Some of them appear to violate basic physical laws." "Which laws specifically?" Dr. Bayul asked, sitting down across from Nyx with genuine interest. "Conservation of energy, for one. Your ship appears to be producing more power than it consumes, and the gravitational fields you generate seem to exist without corresponding mass." "Ah, those." Dr. Bayul nodded. "We discovered how to tap into what we call quantum foam about 200,000 years ago. Empty space is not really empty, you see. It contains enormous amounts of virtual energy. We simply learned how to make some of that energy real." 200,000 years? Nyx repeated numbly. "Yes, that was about when we developed practical faster-than-light travel. Before that, we were limited to slower-than-light exploration. It took us quite a while to reach the nearest star systems." Nyx set down the cup she had been holding, afraid she might drop it. "You have had faster-than-light travel for 200,000 years? "Well, our first attempts were rather crude," Dr. Bayol admitted. "We could only manage about 10 times the speed of light initially. Now our fastest ships can cross the galaxy in a few months. The Vorthak Empire's fastest ships could barely manage 5 times light speed, and that had taken them millions of years to develop. These humans claim to have surpassed that achievement in a fraction of the time." "How?" Nyx asked. "How did you advance so quickly?" Dr. Bayul tilted her head thoughtfully. "I suppose it comes from necessity. We knew we were not alone in the galaxy. We found evidence of other civilizations quite early in our development. Some of them were clearly hostile, so we had to advance quickly or risk extinction. Evidence of other civilizations? Oh, yes. We found Vorthak survey probes buried in our ice caps when we were still developing agriculture. We also detected radio signals from dozens of species across the galaxy. It became clear that we needed to catch up quickly if we wanted to survive. Nyx felt sick. The humans had known about galactic civilization for thousands of years. They had used that knowledge to bootstrap their own development at impossible speeds. But the technological barriers, Nyx protested, the energy requirements, the material science challenges, the mathematical complexity, how did you overcome them so quickly? We cheated, Dr. Beul said with a smile. Instead of trying to brute force our way through every problem, we learned to work with natural forces. Take faster-than-light travel, for example. Most species try to push matter through space faster than light can travel. We discovered it was much easier to fold space itself. Fold space? Think of it like folding a piece of paper. Instead of traveling across the surface from one point to another, you fold the paper so the 2 points touch. We do the same thing with space-time. Nyx understood the theory, but the practical application should have been impossible. The energy requirements alone would demand the total output of several stars. Where do you get the power for such operations? From the stars themselves, Dr. Beul replied casually. We built our first Dyson sphere about 150,000 years ago. Once you can harvest the complete output of a star, energy stops being a limiting factor. Dyson sphere? Nyx had heard the theoretical concept, but no civilization had ever managed to build one. A structure that completely surrounds a star to capture all of its energy output. We have several dozen of them now throughout human space. They provide power for our larger projects. Nyx leaned back in her chair, overwhelmed. The humans were describing technology that was centuries beyond anything the Vorthak Empire possessed. They spoke of impossible achievements as casually as discussing the weather. How large is human space? She asked quietly. Currently, we have colonies in about 40,000 star systems. Most are concentrated within a few thousand light-years of Earth, but we have exploration fleets that have traveled much farther. 40,000 star systems. The entire Vorthak Empire controlled fewer than 1,000 worlds, and they had been expanding for over 1,000,000 years. Are you at war with anyone? Nyx asked. Dr. Beul looked sad. We try to avoid war when possible. Most conflicts can be resolved through negotiation or economic pressure. When we do encounter truly hostile species, we prefer to contain rather than destroy them. Contain? We relocate them to suitable worlds where they can develop without threatening others. It is more humane than conquest or extermination. Nyx realized with growing horror what the human was describing. They were powerful enough to relocate entire civilizations against their will. They spoke of it as a humanitarian gesture. What about the Vorthak Empire? She asked. What about it? Will you relocate us as well? Dr. Beul was quiet for a long moment. That depends on your people's choices, Nyx. We would prefer to work with the Vorthak Empire rather than against it. You have knowledge and experience. That could be valuable. But we cannot allow the continued conquest and enslavement of other species. And if we refuse to change, then we will make the choice for you. But we hope it does not come to that. Nyx stared at the human scientist. Dr. Beul spoke with the calm confidence of someone who knew her people could enforce their will anywhere in the galaxy. The most terrifying part was that she seemed to genuinely care about Vorthak welfare. Your people are not what we expected, Nyx said finally. What did you expect? primitive animals, easy conquest, a source of slaves and resources. Dr. Bayol nodded sadly. Yes, we know. We have been watching your fleet for months. We hoped you might have changed since your last visit to our system. You were watching us? Nix, we have been watching everyone for a very long time. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and someone needs to keep an eye on things. As the human left her cell, Nix sat in stunned silence. The Vorthak Empire, the most powerful force in known space, had just learned they were children playing with toys compared to these impossible humans. General Quan Sik stood before the assembled Vorthak officers in the main conference room of Luna Station 7. The aliens sat stiffly in chairs designed for their reptilian anatomy, their scales a pale shade that indicated stress or fear. Commander. Kale kept his eyes fixed on the table, refusing to meet the general's gaze. I understand you have questions about human capabilities, Quan Sik said, speaking in clear Vorthok. Rather than simply telling you what we have accomplished, I thought it might be more effective to show you. He gestured to the large holographic projector in the center of the room. The device hummed to life, filling the space above the table with a three-dimensional map of local space. Stars appeared as points of light, with colored indicators showing the extent of various galactic civilizations. This is our current understanding of local galactic geography, Quan Sik explained. The red areas indicate Vorthak territory. About 800 star systems, most acquired through conquest over the past 1,000,000 years. Commander Kale finally looked up. An accurate assessment. The Empire has brought order to a significant portion of this galactic arm. Quan Sik nodded politely. And the green areas represent human space. The map changed, and the aliens made sounds of shock. Green indicators spread across the display like a growing infection, covering thousands of star systems. The human territory dwarfed the Vorthak Empire by a factor of 50. Impossible, whispered Science Officer Nix. No civilization could expand that quickly. We did not expand through conquest, Quan Sik explained. We grew through invitation and cooperation. Most of these systems invited human settlement or requested our assistance with various problems. Engineer Ha Rin stepped forward from her, positioned near the wall. She was young for a human, barely middle-aged, but her eyes held the confidence of someone who had seen remarkable things. General, may I show them the Eden Project? She asked. Please do. Ha Rin touched a control panel, and the holographic display zoomed in on a particular star system. This is Ross 128, about 11 light-years from Earth. When we first arrived here 40,000 years ago, the system contained one dead world and several barren rocks. The display showed a lifeless planet, gray and cratered like an ancient moon. The planet had lost its atmosphere to solar wind millions of years ago, Heron continued. The local star was too active, and the planet's magnetic field had failed. By all conventional wisdom, it was worthless. She pressed another control, and the image changed dramatically. The gray world transformed into a blue and green paradise, with vast oceans and continents covered in forests. This is Ross 128b today. We restored the magnetic field using artificial generators, rebuilt the atmosphere through controlled terraforming, and introduced carefully selected species from dozens of worlds. It now supports a population of 3 billion beings from 17 different species. Commander Kale leaned forward. How long did this transformation take? About 5,000 years for the basic terraforming. Another 10,000 to establish. Stable ecosystems. The process is much faster now that we have better techniques. You can bring dead worlds back to life? Asked Tactical Officer Jen. Dead worlds are often easier than living ones, Harin replied. We do not have to worry about disrupting existing ecosystems. We can design everything from scratch. She changed the display again, showing a gas giant surrounded by artificial rings. This is Jupiter in our home system. We have built habitat rings around it that provide living space for over 2 trillion beings. The rings themselves are self-sustaining ecosystems. The aliens stared at the image in silence. The scale of construction was beyond their comprehension. How do you build something that large? Nix asked. Slowly and carefully, Harin said with a smile. We started with small orbital habitats and gradually expanded them. The rings took about 50,000 years to complete. But most of that time was spent perfecting the ecosystem balance. General Quan Sik gestured for Harin to continue. Show them the Lazarus worlds. Ah, yes. Harin's expression became more serious. These are some of our more challenging projects. The display showed a star system that looked wrong somehow. The star itself pulsed with unnatural rhythms, and the planets orbited in impossible configurations. This system was destroyed by a supernova about 2 million years ago, Harin explained. We found it during our early explorations and decided to rebuild it. Rebuild a destroyed star system? Commander Kale's voice cracked slightly. We restarted the star using controlled fusion techniques and reconstructed the planets from the remaining debris. It took about 300,000 years, but we managed to restore the original ecosystems based on archaeological evidence. She paused, then added quietly. The original inhabitants had been extinct for millions of years, but we were able to recreate their species using genetic material preserved in the ruins. They are thriving now. The room fell silent except for the hum of the holographic projector. The Vorthak officers looked stunned, unable to process what they were seeing. How many of these projects do you have? Zhen asked weakly. Currently active? About 6,000 major terraforming operations and 12,000 restoration projects. We also have several hundred experimental ecosystems where we test new ideas. General Quan Sik stepped forward. The point of this demonstration is not to intimidate you, but to help you understand our perspective. We do not see the galaxy as something to be conquered. We see it as something to be cultivated. But the resources, Commander Kale protested. The energy requirements alone are easily met when you have access to the output of entire stars, Quan Sik replied. We built our first Dyson sphere to power our terraforming projects. Now we have dozens of them throughout human space. Engineer Hayreen brought up another display, showing a star completely surrounded by a metallic shell. This is one of our newer designs. Instead of a solid sphere, we use a swarm of solar collectors that can be reconfigured as needed, much more efficient and flexible. You harvest entire stars, Nix said, her voice barely a whisper. We use their energy, yes. But we are careful not to damage them. Stars are too valuable to waste. What about the species that already lived in these systems? Asked Communications Officer Vec. Did you displace them? General Quan Sik's expression became sad. In some cases, we arrived too late. Many civilizations had already destroyed themselves through war or environmental damage. In others, we were able to work with local populations to improve their worlds. And if they refused your help, then we respected their wishes, as long as they did not threaten others. We have encountered several species that preferred isolation. We monitor them from a distance to ensure their safety, but we do not interfere. Harin added, "We learned early in our expansion that forced cooperation never works. Every species must choose its own path. We simply try to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to make that choice." Commander Kale stood up abruptly, his movements jerky with stress. "This is all very impressive, but what does it have to do with us? The Vorthak Empire has its own territory and its own ways." General Kwansik looked at him with patient eyes. "Commander, your empire has destroyed over 30 civilizations in the past 100,000 years. You enslave entire species and strip their worlds of resources. From our perspective, you are a threat to galactic stability. And what do you intend to do about it?" "That depends on you," Kwansik replied. "We would prefer to work with the Vorthak Empire to find a better way forward. You have knowledge and experience that could be valuable in our projects, but we cannot allow the continued destruction of other species." The general gestured to the holographic display, which now showed the full scope of human space in all its green glory. "We have the resources and capability to enforce galactic peace if necessary, but we would much rather have your cooperation." Commander Kyle sank back into his chair, overwhelmed by the implications. His empire, which had seemed so powerful just days ago, was nothing compared to this human civilization that could rebuild. "Star systems and resurrect extinct species, what are you?" he asked quietly. "We are gardeners," General Kwansik replied, "and we would like you to help us tend the galaxy." Ambassador Yu Jin led Commander Kyle through the pristine forests of northern Canada, their footsteps silent on the soft earth. The Vorthak commander moved stiffly, his reptilian features tense with barely controlled fear. Everything about this world defied his understanding of how planets should work. "Your cities," Kyle said, his voice strained. "They make no sense. How do you fit millions of beings into structures that appear to be part of the forest itself?" Eugene smiled, gesturing toward what looked like a cluster of massive trees in the distance. "Our architecture has evolved beyond the need to dominate landscapes. Those trees are buildings, grown rather than built. Each one houses about 50,000 people, but they also serve as part of the forest ecosystem." "Grown buildings," Kyle repeated numbly. It was becoming a familiar refrain. They walked past a small lake where strange creatures played in the water. They looked like dolphins, but their movements were too coordinated, too purposeful. Kale watched them arrange stones on the shore in complex patterns. "Are those intelligent?" he asked. "Enhanced dolphins, yes. We helped them develop tool use and written language about 20,000 years ago. They are quite talented artists." "You create intelligence?" "We help it develop where it already exists. Intelligence is precious, Commander. We nurture it wherever we find it." As they continued through the forest, Kyle noticed more impossible things. Plants that seemed to glow with their own light. Animals that moved in perfect coordination as if sharing a single mind. Trees that whispered to each other in the wind with sounds almost like language. "None of this is natural," he said. "Define natural," Eugene replied. "We have guided evolution here. Yes, but we work with existing biological systems rather than replacing them. This forest is more alive, more vibrant than it was before human intervention." They emerged into a clearing where the trees formed a perfect circle around an area of open grass. In the center stood something that made Kale's blood run cold. It was clearly artificial but ancient. The metal was corroded, the surfaces pitted with age, but he recognized the design. "That is a Zethkari monument," he whispered. Eugene nodded. "Very good. The Zethkari civilization visited Earth about 200,000 years ago. They demanded tribute and threatened to bombard our cities if we refused. What happened to them? They are extinct now. This monument is all that remains of their empire." Kale moved closer to the corroded structure, reading the inscriptions carved into its surface. They were threats, demands for submission written in the ancient Zethkari script. At the base of the monument was a smaller plaque written in several languages, including Vorthok. "Here lies the Zethkari Empire," he read aloud. "They demanded the submission of Earth and received the judgment of humanity. May others learn from their example." A rather dramatic inscription, Eugene admitted, but accurate. The Zethkari were very insistent about conquest. We tried negotiation, but they preferred violence. "How did you defeat them?" "The Zethkari had ships that could destroy planets." Yes, they were quite proud of that capability. "Unfortunately for them, we had developed defensive technologies they did not expect. Their planet-killer weapons simply did not work against our shields." Eugene led him around the monument to another section of the clearing. Here stood more ancient structures, each from a different civilization. Kyle recognized some of them from historical records: the Morthak, the Veltar Federation, the Crimson, Hegemony. All were legendary empires that had vanished mysteriously over the past few 100,000 years. "All of these came to Earth?" Kale asked. "Oh no, not all. Some we encountered during our early expansion. Others we met when they tried to invade human colonies. A few we found already extinct and preserved their memory out of respect. You have a collection of dead empires. We prefer to think of it as a memorial. Each of these civilizations contributed something to galactic history. Even the hostile ones taught us valuable lessons." They walked past monument after monument. Kyle counted dozens of them, representing civilizations that had once ruled sectors of the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire had records of many of these species, but only as historical footnotes. He had never imagined seeing physical remains of their cultures. "The Bloodfang Hierarchy," he read from another monument. "They controlled 800 systems before they encountered us." Yes, they were quite aggressive, very fond of ritual combat and gladiatorial games. We offered them better entertainment options, but they were not interested in change. "What did you do to them?" Eugene's expression became sad. "We relocated them to a system with worlds more suitable to their culture. They could continue their traditional ways without threatening other species. Last I heard, they had developed into quite a sophisticated warrior society." "Relocated," Kale repeated. "You moved an entire empire." "It was the most humane solution. They were not evil, just limited in their perspective. Sometimes species need time and space to grow beyond their destructive impulses." They continued walking until they reached the center of the memorial garden. Here stood the largest monument, made from some kind of crystal that seemed to contain swirling lights. The inscription was in a script Kale did not recognize. "This is for the Elder Ones," Eugene explained. "The first species we encountered when we began exploring the galaxy. They were ancient even then, older than any civilization we have found since. What happened to them?" "They transcended, evolved beyond physical existence into something we cannot fully understand. But before they left, they gave us a gift." "What kind of gift?" Eugene gestured to the crystal monument. As Kale watched, The ox lights inside began to form patterns, shapes that hurt to look at directly, but conveyed meaning nonetheless. Knowledge, understanding, the wisdom of millions of years of galactic observation. They had been watching and recording everything for eons. Wars, births of civilizations, the rise and fall of empires. They gave it all to us. Why? Because they saw something in humanity that they approved of. The desire to nurture rather than destroy. The willingness to sacrifice for others. They believed we could do better than those who came before. Cale stared at the monument, trying to process what he was seeing. The patterns in the crystal seemed to show the entire history of the galaxy, compressed into symbols that bypassed rational thought and spoke directly to some deeper understanding. "This is why you know so much about other civilizations," he said. "Part of it, yes. We have continued their work of observation and record-keeping. We monitor the development of every species in the galaxy. Even us. Especially you. The Vorthak Empire is significant. You have been a major galactic power for over 1,000,000 years. Your actions affect countless other species." Kyle turned, away from the monument, disturbed by the implications. "You have been watching us for hundreds of thousands of years. We have been hoping you would change," Yujin said gently. "Every species goes through phases of development. Aggression and conquest are common in younger civilizations. Most eventually outgrow these impulses and develop more cooperative behaviors. And if they do not," Yujin gestured to the surrounding monuments, "then they join our memorial garden, not by our choice but by their own. Species that cannot adapt to a changing galaxy eventually destroy themselves or others force that change upon them. Are you threatening us? I am offering you a choice, Commander, the same choice we have offered every species we have encountered. Grow beyond your destructive past or be confined until you do." Cale looked around the memorial garden one more time, counting the monuments to dead empires, dozens of civilizations that had once seemed mighty and eternal, now reduced to artistic displays in a human park. "What guarantee do we have that you will not simply add us to your collection?" he asked. "None," Yujin replied honestly. "Except our track record. We have relocated several aggressive species to suitable worlds where they could develop peacefully. Most of them are thriving now. Some have even become valuable allies. And the ones that are not thriving are still alive, which is more than can be said for their victims if we had not intervened." As they walked back toward the human city, hidden among the living trees, Cale felt the weight of history pressing down on him. His people had always seen themselves as the apex predators of the galaxy, the ultimate evolution of intelligence and power. Now he understood they were just another young species stumbling toward an uncertain future, watched and judged by beings who had already walked that path and found a better way. Communications Officer Jen sat in the observation lounge of Luna Station 7, staring out at the stars through the massive transparent aluminum windows. 3 weeks had passed since their capture, and she was no closer to understanding these impossible humans than when they had first arrived. Captain Jamin entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of the warm beverage humans called tea. He had been visiting her regularly, always polite, always patient, always terrifyingly well-informed about everything concerning the Vorthak Empire. "Good evening, Jen," he said, settling into the chair across from her. "I thought you might enjoy watching the sunset over Earth. The view from this angle is particularly beautiful." Jen accepted the tea, but did not drink it. She had been afraid it might be drugged, though Dr. Beul had assured her repeatedly that humans did not use chemical coercion. "Captain, I need to ask you something," she said. "Of course. This entire encounter, our arrival, the battles, our capture, none of it was accidental, was it?" Jae-min smiled sadly. "No, it was not. We have been planning for this meeting for quite some time." "How long?" "The initial protocols were established about 50 years ago, when our deep space monitors detected your empire's preparations for expansion into this sector. We had hoped your people might change course, but when your fleets began moving toward Sol, we knew intervention would be necessary." Jen set down her cup with shaking hands. "You could have stopped us before we ever reached your system. Easily. Our interdiction ships could have disabled your entire fleet while it was still months away from Earth, but that would not have accomplished our real objective, which was understanding your people's true intentions. We needed to see how your empire would react when faced with clearly superior opposition." Jamin gestured toward the stars visible through the window. "Your attack on Earth was never a real threat to us, Jen. Our defensive systems could have stopped 1,000 times as many ships, but we wanted to give your leaders every opportunity to make the right choice." "The right choice?" "To recognize that your current path leads nowhere good. To realize that there are better ways to achieve your people's goals than conquest and destruction." Jen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. "You were testing us?" "Yes. And unfortunately, your empire failed that test rather spectacularly." "What do you mean?" Jamin touched a control panel, and a holographic display materialized, showing the Vorthak home system. Ships were massing around the primary world in numbers that made Jen gasp. "This morning, your Emperor announced the initiation of Operation Infinite Reach, a massive military buildup designed to conquer not just human space, but eventually the entire galaxy. The fleet being assembled contains over 10,000 warships." "That is impossible. The Empire does not have that many ships. They are building them. Every shipyard in Vorthak space is working at maximum capacity. Your government has also issued conscription orders for every male between the ages of 15 and 50. They are preparing for total war." Jen stared at the display in horror. The scope of the military preparation was beyond anything she had imagined possible. But they must know they cannot win. You demonstrated your technological superiority. Your Emperor believes our defensive capabilities were limited to this one system. His advisors have convinced him that humans must have concentrated all their resources here, leaving the rest of our territory vulnerable. Is that true? No. Every human system has similar defensive capabilities. Many have far stronger protections than Earth. Then why has he not been told this? Jamin's expression became grim. Because we wanted to see what choice he would make. When given complete freedom to act, would he seek peaceful resolution, or would he double down on aggression? The holographic display changed to show intercepted communications from the highest levels of the Vorthak government. Jen listened with growing dread as her emperor and his advisors discussed strategies for total galactic conquest. "We will crush the humans first," the emperor declared in a recorded speech. "Then we will hunt down every species that has ever resisted the Empire. We will remake the galaxy in our image, and there will be no force capable of stopping us." "He truly believes this is possible," Jen whispered. "Your emperor has spent so long conquering weaker civilizations that he cannot conceive of encountering something genuinely superior. It is a common failure among aggressive species." "What happens now?" Jamin was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the stars. "Now, we implement containment protocols. Your empire will be prevented from expanding further by whatever means. Necessary. Containment? The Vorthak Empire will be confined to its current territory until such time as your people demonstrate genuine commitment to peaceful coexistence. No expansion, no conquest, no enslavement of other species. And if we resist, then the resistance will be overcome. We have had centuries to prepare for this possibility, Zhen. We know exactly how to neutralize every military asset your empire possesses. The captain touched another control, and the display showed human ships moving throughout the galaxy. Not dozens or hundreds, but thousands upon thousands of vessels. More ships than the entire Vorthak fleet, and each one clearly superior to anything her people had built. This is just a small portion of our available forces, Jamin explained. We have been positioning assets throughout the galaxy for decades. Every major star system, every critical trade route, every strategic location is under our observation and control. You have been planning this for decades? Longer. The protocols for containing aggressive species were developed over 200,000 years ago. You are not the first empire we have had to deal with, and you will probably not be the last. Zhen felt sick. Everything her people had believed about their place in the galaxy was wrong. They were not the apex predators they imagined themselves to be. They were just another aggressive species being managed by beings so far beyond them that the comparison was almost meaningless. "What about us?" she asked. "The crew of this fleet?" "You have a choice. You can return to the Empire with a complete understanding of the situation and try to convince your leaders to choose a better path. Or you can remain here and help us develop policies that minimize harm to your people during the transition." Transition to what? A post-imperial future. Your people will need to learn new ways of thinking, new approaches to interacting with other species. It will not be easy, but it is possible. And if we choose to return home, then you will be allowed to leave with full documentation of everything you have seen here. We hope you can convince your leaders to reconsider their current course. Zhen looked around the observation lounge, thinking about everything she had learned during her captivity. The humans had treated them well, better than most prisoners could expect. They had been fed, housed comfortably, given medical care, and educated about the reality of their situation. "Why are you telling me all this? Why not just implement your containment protocols without warning us?" "Because we prefer cooperation to coercion. If your people can be convinced to change voluntarily, the process will be much less traumatic for everyone involved. And if they cannot be convinced," Captain Jamin's expression became sad but determined, "then we will do what must be done to protect the innocent species your empire threatens, but we will take no pleasure in it." As they sat in silence watching Earth rotate below them, Zhen realized the true horror of their situation. The humans were not evil conquerors seeking to destroy the Vorthak Empire. They were gardeners preparing to prune a diseased branch that threatened the health of the entire galaxy. The choice facing her people was simple: change willingly or be changed by force. Either way, the age of Vorthak expansion was coming to an end. "Will you help us?" Jamin asked quietly. Zhen looked at the human captain, seeing genuine concern in his eyes. Despite everything her empire had done, despite all the destruction and cruelty, he still hoped for a peaceful resolution. "I do not know if my people will listen," she said finally. "But you will try?" "Yes, I will try." It was not much, but it was a beginning. And perhaps, if enough Vorthak could be made to understand the truth of their situation, it might be enough to save their civilization from the fate that had befallen so many others. The test was over. Now came the much harder task of living with the results. Dr. Subin led the group of Vorthak prisoners through the underground archives beneath the Smithsonian Institution. The corridors stretched endlessly in all directions, lined with storage units that hummed with quiet energy. Each unit contained the preserved history of civilizations spanning millions of years. This facility extends several kilometers underground, Dr. Subin explained as they walked. We began construction about 300,000 years ago when our records became too extensive for surface storage. Science Officer Nix examined the storage units with her scanner. These contain quantum storage matrices. The data density is extraordinary. Each unit must hold the equivalent of entire libraries. Each unit contains the complete historical record of one galactic civilization, Subin confirmed. Culture, technology, language, art, scientific discoveries, everything we could preserve or reconstruct. Commander Kale stopped walking. How many units are there? Currently? About 47,000. We add new ones regularly as we encounter previously unknown species or discover new information about extinct civilizations. 47,000 civilizations, Tactical Officer Jen whispered. That we know of. The galaxy is a very old place, and most species do not survive long enough to leave comprehensive records. We estimate there have been at least 200,000 intelligent species over the past 50 million years. They entered a vast circular chamber where holographic displays showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Thousands of points of light marked the locations of known civilizations, both current and historical. Different colors indicated their status: green for thriving, yellow for struggling, red for extinct, and blue for unknown. This is our current understanding of galactic demographics, Subin explained. We update it constantly as new information becomes available. Communications Officer Vec pointed to a cluster of red markers. So many extinct species. Evolution is a harsh process on a galactic scale. Most species destroy themselves before achieving true interstellar capability. War, environmental destruction, resource depletion, plague, cosmic disasters. The universe provides many ways to fail. And the current species? Kyle asked, noting the relatively small number of green markers. About 3,000 actively spacefaring civilizations. Another 12,000 that have achieved basic space travel but remain confined to their home systems. Perhaps 50,000 pre-spaceflight species that show potential for eventual development. Dr. Subin touched a control panel, and the display zoomed in on a particular section of the galaxy. This is Vorthak space. We have been monitoring your empire for approximately 400,000 years. The display showed the Vorthak home system in exquisite detail, not just the planets and their current status, but their entire history, population centers, industrial facilities, military installations, even individual ships moving between worlds. You have been watching us that long? Nix asked, her voice strained. We have been watching everyone that long. Observation is the foundation of understanding. But the level of detail... Kyle stared at the display. You know things about our empire that our own government does not know. Subin nodded. We have very good sensors, and we have had a long time to gather information. Would you like to see your personal file? Before Kale could object, a smaller display materialized showing detailed information about his life. Birth records, education, military service, family relationships, even personal preferences and psychological evaluations. This is impossible, he said. How could you know these things? We have had observers throughout Vorthak space for centuries, Some are humans using advanced camouflage technology. Others are recruited from local populations who share our values. And some information we gather through passive surveillance using sensors you cannot detect. Spies, Jen said bitterly. Observers, Subin corrected. We do not interfere with internal affairs unless they threaten other species. We simply watch and record. The display changed to show historical records of Vorthak expansion. Battle after battle, conquest after conquest, worlds stripped of resources and populations enslaved. The records were more complete than anything in the official Vorthak archives. The destruction of the Kalani civilization, Subin said as images of burning cities filled the display. 237 million casualties. The survivors were sold into slavery throughout the empire. That was a legitimate military action, Kale protested. The Kalani refused to submit to imperial authority. The Kalani were a peaceful species of artists and philosophers. Their only crime was existing in a system the empire wanted for its mineral wealth. More images appeared. The bombardment of Theris Prime. The biological warfare used against the Zox Federation. The systematic extermination of the Windrunner species. We have records of over 300 such actions by Vorthak forces, Subin continued. 37 species driven to complete extinction. Hundreds of worlds stripped of resources and left uninhabitable. Why are you showing us this? Nix asked quietly. Because you need to understand how the rest of the galaxy sees the Vorthak Empire. You are not viewed as liberators or bringers of order. You are seen as a plague that consumes everything in its path. The display changed again, showing recent communications intercepts from across the galaxy. Desperate messages from species requesting human protection from Vorthak expansion. Refugee fleets fleeing imperial conquest. Appeals to other civilizations for military aid. The Bright Ones have petitioned us 17 times to intervene before Vorthak forces reach their home system, Subin explained. The Crystal Garden civilization has offered us exclusive mining rights to their entire star cluster in exchange for protection from your empire. They fear us, Kyle said, and there was something like pride in his voice. They fear extinction, Subin corrected. There is a difference between respect for strength and terror of annihilation. Dr. Subin led them to another section of the archive chamber. Here, the displays showed not historical records, but current intelligence. Real-time monitoring of Vorthak military movements, political discussions, economic data, even personal communications between high-ranking officials. This morning, your emperor held a war council to discuss expanding into the Andromeda Galaxy, Subin said. The plan calls for the construction of a massive fleet specifically designed for extragalactic conquest. How could you possibly know that? Vec demanded. That meeting was held in the most secure facility in the Empire. We have been preparing for this conversation for a very long time. It was necessary to understand your government's intentions before deciding how to proceed. The implications hit Kale like a physical blow. You could have stopped us at any time. Yes. Our expansion, our conquests, all the species we destroyed, you could have prevented all of it. Subin's expression became sad. We hoped you would. Change on your own. Most species eventually realize that cooperation is more profitable than conquest. We kept waiting for the Vorthak Empire to reach that conclusion naturally. And when we did not, we began preparing intervention protocols. Your attack on Earth was the final test. Test? We needed to see if your empire would continue its aggressive expansion even when faced with clearly superior opposition. Your Government's decision to proceed with the Andromeda invasion plans despite your fleet's defeat confirmed our worst fears. The archive chamber fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the storage systems. The Vorthak officers stared at the displays, showing the complete scope of human knowledge about their civilization. "How many other species are you watching?" Nix asked finally. "All of them. Every intelligent species in the galaxy has a file in this archive. We monitor their development, their conflicts, their potential for growth or destruction, and you judge them. We observe them. They judge themselves through their actions." Kale turned away from the displays, unable to look at more evidence of his empire's crimes. "What happens now?" "That depends on choices your people make. We will be presenting your emperor with several options soon. How he responds will determine the future of the Vorthak Empire. And if he chooses war?" Subin gestured to the thousands of storage units surrounding them. "Then we will preserve what we can of Vorthak culture and add your empire to our historical archives. But we hope it does not come to that." As they left the archive chamber, Kale felt the weight of countless eyes upon him. Humanity had been watching the galaxy for hundreds of thousands of years, recording every triumph and atrocity with patient precision. His people had always believed they were the masters of their own destiny. Now he understood they had been living under the gaze of beings who could end their empire with a thought, but who chose instead to hope for something better. The most terrifying part was realizing that hope might finally be running out.